Heritage Open Days with Maidstone Museums. I'm Sam Harris, I'm the Collections Manager, and I cover all of the museums in Maidstone, including the Maidstone Museum of Carriages. So we thought that unfortunately with the current medical situation we're not able to open the Carriage Museum. We thought we'd take Heritage Open Days as an opportunity to show you behind the scenes and highlight some of the carriages within the collections and some of the details often visitors don't get to see. So we hope you enjoy looking at some of the surprise things that we have here in the museum. This carriage is probably the one in the collection that has one of the biggest stories behind it, and often we can't necessarily get that across fully in the interpretation. But this dates from about the 1830s. It's a travelling coach, so it would have been intended to be used for long journeys, which you can tell by the sort of lots of storage that it has attached to it. But the story itself is that this actually was made and bought by the Earl of Moray in the 1830s. He was marrying the Earl of Elgin's daughter, and unfortunately the marriage didn't take place. Unfortunately though, he had already bought 6 matching white horses to use on their grand tour of Europe for their honeymoon. He was so devastated that the wedding didn't take place that he actually shot the horses and wheeled the carriage into a barn on their estate in Scotland, and it was never overused. So this is one of the most original condition carriages that we have, and there's little details that point to the fact it's never been used. The only and longest journey it ever took was coming to us on a train from Scotland when the Carriage Museum opened. So some of the details that we have to point out are the fact that we know this is very much original and never used, is that the pins that hold the wheels on are very much protruding, they've never been worn down. On a carriage that would have been used, these would have been completely worn flush almost, but here they're very much kind of still visible. Other little detail to point out is that some carriages, particularly travelling carriages, have this detail here. It's a sword box, so the concept of highway robbery was definitely very much a real thing, so people would often keep their valuables or even swords for protection in this section, which was only accessible from inside the carriage or the vehicle. This kind of vehicle would also had space on the top, which would have had big travelling boxes for storage, and sometimes also under the floors also had space for storage too. Okay, so we see very much that what's going on inside doesn't reflect what the outside looks like on this carriage. Even though it was wheeled into the stables in the 1800s, the site itself was used as a barracks during the Second World War, and the story goes that army personnel that were stationed on the site actually used to go into the carriage to hide to have cigarettes. Unfortunately, most of the inside has been completely stripped. So we see that most of the fabric has been removed, the steps almost completely have been dismantled as well.